Hi, everyone. Welcome back for the second half of our week 1 lecture. This is going to cover Capstone chapters 3 through 5. So we started with basically what is communication and all of the facets and definitions and discipline. And now we're going to move to one of your favorite areas, she says in sarcasm. I know this can be a difficult area, so I want to hopefully shed some light on why we spend so much time on theories, paradigms, and research, if you will, and why we feel it's important. So we have defined communication and looked at different communication, org, political, health, all of that. But now I want to talk about how we view or how we study communication. And there are different viewpoints or different ways that people go about that. And I know you've heard this a lot throughout your 4 years, but again, I'm hoping to shed some light on the why and how it can be useful to you now that you are graduating. So I really think that one of the biggest aims of the degree and the program is that we feel that you are an educated person who can look up facts and knowledge, that you know how to quote unquote find the truth, if you will, little t. And that can be ever challenging in today's landscape because you have fake news, all kinds of media distortion. So how do you know that you know something for truth, for real, that this has actually happened? I was scrolling through Instagram and I saw a post about who would have guessed that Marjorie Green Taylor would be blaming the tampon shortage on transgender men. And I was like, what? Are you kidding me? Is this for real? So of course, I mean, I didn't know. It sounds absurd and ludicrous. So Snopes is a website I usually talk about. And here I can actually, at this point, it's a debunking fact checker. Did Marjorie Green Taylor blame tampon shortage on men? Wonder what we're going to get. Or my search did not reveal any results. Oh no, maybe it's too new. This literally just happened. So it might not be on Snopes yet to fact check it even, but I did the same thing on even Google. And not that we can trust everything, but let's put tampons in and you will get blames men for tampon shortage. There it is. There's a YouTube of a reporter talking to her. There's videos of it where you can actually see where she blames trans men for tampon shortage from Vice. And these are sources I would say are credible. Sure, they are not from a peer-reviewed journal database, but the idea is still the same, that we get facts. And do we understand even why this is impossible? I guess that's a whole nother question. We'll leave that for now. But certainly we're very interested in that you can pick out and find information, especially in this, again, convoluted landscape we're in. One of the things I included is also a news infographic, because anything you Google, any news source, whatever it is, it's all going to be biased. That's why I said truth with a little t, because I don't know if we're ever again in our lifetime going to get a really clear picture where something, this is the fact. You can look at what happened with COVID. You can look at what's going on in the Senate hearings right now. If you're watching any of those, it's just astounding. Person says, I didn't say that. Then they show them a tape of them saying that and they say, I didn't say that. So who was that? Was that your twin brother? It's fascinating. It's frustrating. This is a graphic again. Please do not be offended or try to say, no, it's not, because even this graphic, which comes from a neutral source, is probably still biased, right? But it tries to give you what it says are mostly mainstream. Now, a lot of people would say the New York Times way biased. It could be. I think in these middle ones here, though, I definitely go to the BBC. A lot of people think NPR is way too liberal, same with the New York Times. But generally, they're rated as pretty much telling you what's going on. They're not trying to hide information. Now, when you get, there are still, look at the Atlantic, very liberal, MSNBC, the Huffington Post, they're saying, hey, questionable on the journalistic integrity of these. And not only do you get the journalistic integrity and the standards, but it rates this on, how complex is the source. So I think this is kind of interesting. The simplest news sources that seem to be giving you the best, better than not watching news at all, USA Today and CNN. So you see there are liberal reports over here. It's funny. My mom follows this David Wolf guy for organic information. Just scary. I mean, it's basic AF. You can interpret. And again, you see some others over here, and certainly it's just really fascinating. So we need to know how to search for information. And even though my Marjorie Green search did not come out, another one I did last semester was when the famous talk show host Joe Rogan said, if you drink your urine, you won't get COVID. And I was like, come on, seriously? And I didn't know. I assumed it would not cure COVID, but what I wanted to do was at least look and see, is drinking your urine bad for you? This is Loki. And of course, what I found is it's very bad for you. It might save your life on one occasion, but drinking your urine over time puts tons of harmful bacteria in your body, as we might expect. So certainly, this idea that we go and we search for information, that we don't just buy into conspiracy theories without evidence, without facts, without credibility. And that's what I want. Like one of the best emails I ever got was a girl who said, I really learned a lot in your quantitative class. My dog came down with a rare illness, and I'm reading all these research and medical articles, trying to find out more about it. And I actually understand some of it. And I was like, thank you. That's all we want, that you can interpret statistics or find out if those statistics are biased, and you have an understanding of what's going on. Talks a little bit in this chapter too, not only about conspiracy theories and how much Americans believe in them. We do love them, but we want you to consult evidence and look for research that's credible. Primary, secondary citations, usually we go with the primary. Did the person say it, or was it secondhand that you heard it? And come on, you guys have learned this since grade school. Did you hear it straight from the source, or did Mary tell you in third period that Danny hates your guts now? Who told you? Because Mary might have some alternative motives. You don't know. Primary is usually always better. So these are the kinds of reasons we begin to look at research and what it can do for us. I wanted to point out that we also document. Academics are very, very interested in documenting their sources and where they got them from. And you have learned that painlessly or painfully through APA. And certainly that's the format we use to cite all of our information in the academic world. Now, out in the more media world, if you were to get a job in PR or media relations, things like that, you might be asked to use Associated Press, which is totally different. AP style is more a journalism style as well as media. So it's the press style book and briefing on media law, a lot of different journalists, and it's a totally different style. Now, don't yell at me and say, well, why didn't you teach us AP? Because academics use APA. But I want you to be aware as you go out there and you may be getting into jobs that are media related or journalism, that this AP is different. So at least you kind of have that knowledge. So this is why I think we're so concerned with knowledge and how we know what we know. And certainly there are different kinds of knowledge, which leads us to the paradigms, okay? You remember these, I know, but I'm going to try and make them simplistic for you today. And certainly we'll talk about what these words mean. And we're also going to look at this box. And this is really where I want you to focus a little bit today. When we talk about foundation empirical, this is really our statistics. We're trying to predict, we're trying to generalize. It's very objective, survey, quantitative. All right, let's go over to this box, which is called reflexive empirical. This box could also be called interpretive, ethnography, qualitative. Those are just a few words. So this one's looking at statistics. This one's looking at stories. And oftentimes, I've probably said this before in class, I don't want to hear somebody's story. Show me the statistics. That's what my way of looking at the world is very empirical. So if you had a good experience with that doctor, that's a lovely story, but I want to know how many people he's killed, or something like that. That's just me. I had a girl who said, no, I've found in my life, I'm much more interested in the story. And that actually helped her find her way into a profession more in social work and listening to people and sharing stories. So in a way, if you connect with one of these paradigms, it really could help you figure out, well, how do I like to view things? Am I much more people and stories and subjective reality? Do I like concrete things? If I know I'm measuring the right measure and that's exactly what it needs to be and I'm good. That's a different career path. Now let's come down here. These two both down here were the analytical foundational and the analytical reflexive, both represent critical studies, if you will. And you see that through the words here. These are both critical rhetorical ways of looking at things. And that is, do you like to analyze things now for meaning? It's not about someone's story or getting to know people or sharing information that way. It's not about looking at concrete facts, objective numbers. This is done very, orderly. This says, I need to analyze and try to place value. Values belongs in this as well. So let's go very quickly. We're going to come back to your theory box assignment, because this is what I would like for you to do. In here, I have 4 paradigms, if you will. I'm going to go ahead and click on edit so that we can actually do this right here. Your job is to come up with all appropriate related terms for each paradigm. I want 8 to 10 in each box. And we've just done this, so this shouldn't be too hard. We're going to start with functional. This is also empirical. What else would you put in this box? Well, I would put quantitative. I would put the word objective. I might put the word statistics. Do you see what I'm doing? But if I go over to interpretive, what might I have over here? I might have ethnography. Oops, sorry, my spelling. Interviews, grounded theory, right? Oh, qualitative. All right, now let's keep going. Let's look at our critical box. What would you put here? Well, how about rhetoric, analysis, values? This is what I'm trying to get at. You have one last box, and this one's probably a little more difficult. So I want to reference you to a specific page in the text for this one. And this is going to be on page 39. This is basically conversation analysis. There's a little diagram at the bottom, but I want you to look at some of the words in the Toulmin argument there that might help you. This is observable, right? This is, what else would you say? Systematic, okay? Come up with 8 to 10 possible words. Use chapter 3. You can look in, and what I mean by in chapter 3, they've got these little Toulmin models, and look into the little models and look for the words that are describing each of the paradigms. I am not going to talk about performance because we really don't teach it anymore. So I just want you to concentrate on the big 4 you've learned in this class. This is, I tend to see the world in the functional and, believe it or not, the critical paradigms. I'm not much about this systematic back and forth diagnosis conversation or the stories. And how do you see the world? They actually do this kind of thing on career tests. Do you like facts? Do you like figures? Do you like numbers? Most of our majors say no. Majority of our major prefers to be on this side of the block of the 2x2 here, over in conversation analysis and the interpretive paradigm. So that's what I'm asking you to do for that assignment. Okay, let's go ahead and head back to our PowerPoint real quick and keep on going through these paradigms. I have another picture for you, but I'm not sure I want to show it to you. It might confuse you more, but here's another place to look for some more terms. So we see empirical, interpretivist, reflexive is another word if I didn't put that in there. These are all kinds of grounded theory, in socially constructed. That's a great one for the interpretive, qualitative. Again, over here, you've got much more objective, goal, prediction, control, same kind of words. So use both of these models as well as chapter 3, all of the possible words, because I think what ends up making all of this so confusing is there's multiple words for each paradigm, but they're all getting at a criteria or way that we view things. Do you view things more empirical, more interpretive, more analytical, or more conversationally? That's what we're trying to ask you to consider. All right, the status of how do we know if somebody's story is good? How do we know if a survey was conducted right? How do we know that they actually heard what they said they heard in a conversation and the pause was really meant to be there? That is a big discussion among scholars, as you might know. So I really want to turn your attention to chapter 5. And chapter 5 goes back and defines a theory. Please, we will need to know that. Do I have theory in here? I might a little further on, but let's stay with this one right here. A theory is really ultimately a generalized conclusion in a way. We believe that this phenomenon might exist. So we theorize about it. I theorize that most seniors for this course are completely checked out. Some of you are just, I don't even care anymore. That I may say that's a theory. I've seen it happen often enough that I can say by March, my March 1 in a spring semester, seniors are gone. March 1, not others. They last a little bit longer than seniors in their spring graduating. So again, the theory is there. And then we begin to talk about how do we know if it's a good theory and how do we come up with theories? And the concept you find is of induction and deduction. And that process of, well, this happened to me. I wonder if this happens to other people. Oh gosh, I could share some interesting ways I've thought about things, but I found, we were talking about tampons earlier, I'm just gonna go there. And I found out when I was in Peru that women have a certain nickname for that time, much like women in the US have a nickname for it. And I began to wonder if all women in different parts of the world have certain nicknames. And I thought it was fascinating. I would love to analyze that from a language standpoint. That's a theory in the making. And if you don't know, most women here might say my Aunt Flo is visiting. That was what I grew up with. When I found this one interesting because in Peru, my friend told me it's, oh, Mr. Rojas is here. And I found it very interesting that it's Mr. Rojas is that time of the month. And so I wonder about these. So it's maybe something specific to me. And then I think, my gosh, maybe other people experience this. And of course, you can go the other way. Wow, this seems to be a general phenomenon. I wonder if it happens to everyone. And that's really how we just start thinking and then testing our knowledge. Does it or does it not? So I'll go back to COVID, probably a better example. Does everyone who gets vaccinated also get COVID? General, am I going to get COVID because I'm vaccinated? Because people come out and said, yeah, everyone's going to get it anyway. Doesn't matter. Really, if I were to give you the empirical quantitative side of things, that does not seem to be the case. And at this point, I can still knock on wood and say, I have not gotten it. So to just make a general conclusion that it doesn't matter isn't necessarily a good way to go. Either induction or deduction in their simplest forms can be very dangerous, just like syllogistic reasoning. And we're going to talk a whole lot more about it because you are going to have, a syllogism paper where you have a major premise, a minor premise, and a conclusion. This was actually, I think I told you, I kind of came up with a theory through argument, and most people agreed with it. I said, all men are jerks. Brian is a male, therefore he's a jerk. And I was like, we agree. And the flip side, I told you, all women are emotional. Kate is a woman, therefore she's emotional. Now, the word all in there, we do have to quantify. And that's where I say this can get overly simplistic, but we look for these patterns. And we're going to talk about how we reason through things. So if that happened to me, will it happen to someone else? And that's how we start questioning things. Let me go back to the first two up there, the demarcation criteria and even falsifying. This is how we evaluate theory. And I want you to look back on page 67 in particular. And 67 has a criteria for evaluating theories. And that demarcation theory says, does it meet this standard? Does it meet this reliability, even to use a quantitative term? How do we know this theory is true? How do we know? And these are our standards, and we do have standards. And I guess that's what I'm saying. You should have standards for your, I was about to go back to the infographic, but that's not the one I left up. You should have standards. Is this good reporting? Are journalisms holding back on information, or are they jumping to conclusions and don't have the information? Sometimes that's how I feel about CNN, that they just jump right on it and start saying whatever they can. And I think that causes some folks to not believe their reporting. So these are the things we're talking about. How, and I do have to say proven versus falsified is also talked about in this chapter. And it is a huge pet peeve of mine, okay? I want to tell you that nothing is ever truly proven. Please don't ever say something is proven. Now, if you're a good salesman, you will hear that every night on the TV. It was proven to withstand 20,000 pounds of pressure. No. It is not proven. At best, it's a theory. And one of the reasons we say it's never proven is because there's always a circumstance in which it wouldn't hold true. Always. And certainly that's why that unknown we can't account for. It's that notion I often talked about in class as smoking causes cancer. Can't say that. Smoking is highly correlated with cancer, but someone could smoke and never get cancer. It's that exception that, 99.9%, it's that 100th of a percent that we can't use that word. And don't use it in any of your papers. I'll be sure to comment on it. So the book talks about marital conflicts as well as an example, and you can take a look at that. So these are kind of, again, the science versus the humanities. Science is trying to culminate and predict and find ways to again make things better, I think, in a progressive sense. In the humanities, we want to find meanings and things for us. So I almost feel like this is a little bit of the empirical versus the interpretive. So it's kind of interesting. I did not become a scientist, so I do not want to keep making vaccines or know more about genes, but I do like finding meaning for people in conversation, and probably why I ended up in the humanities, because I like that social construction of reality. All paradigms, again, have a criteria. We need to know that it can explain and meet certain standards. And I think that's pretty much where I'm going to leave this lecture. The very last of chapter 5 goes into the process of modeling, and we kind of revisit variables again, but I don't really want to go that far. Let's go ahead and leave that in this class. And where I hope you are is that you can use chapters 3 through 5 to come up with all the words that you can possibly think of that might go in each of the 4 boxes on your assignment. I hope that might have clarified paradigms and theories that you've been hearing those words for quite some time now, and why we are also very concentrated on research and finding facts and finding good information and understanding that information. I mean, it's how are you going to coach your baseball team? Through statistics and empirical numbers? That would be Moneyball's approach. But what if you want to listen to other players' stories about how they think it should be done, or analyze, they're all different ways we look at things. And it doesn't mean we can't share some. Like I said, I think I'm analytical. I have leaned towards the empirical. Early on in my life, I was much more interpretive, and that's what led me into the humanities. And so we can change, we can move paradigms, we can see things differently, but our search is for truth, to find out what's real. And that's quite a task living in the time we are living in. So, all right, hopefully all that made sense. We'll see you next week for rhetoric.